At the Sovereign Citadel on Etheria Prime, Captain Ethan Drake served as tactical security officer, coordinating defensive systems for the Joint Operations Center. He was competent, respected, and generally managed to navigate the complex politics of serving in an alien imperial court without causing incidents. Until today, when he caused a spectacular incident through initiative, tactical improvisation, and what would charitably be called aggressive interpretation of standing orders. An unexpected security breach in one of the Citadel's outer defensive perimeters triggered automated lockdown protocols that would trap several dignitaries and diplomatic personnel in areas with compromised life support. The breach was eventually determined to be mechanical failure, but the lockdown protocols were rigid, designed to contain threats rather than facilitate evacuation. Ethan, monitoring from tactical operations, saw that following standard procedures would result in casualties before proper authorization to override lockdowns could be obtained. So he made a decision. He used his access codes to manually override the lockdown protocols, prioritizing evacuation over containment, essentially rewriting security response in real time without authorization. The immediate outcome: everyone evacuated safely with zero casualties. The longer-term outcome: Ethan had violated about a dozen protocols, exceeded his authority by several levels, and created a diplomatic incident. He was summoned to Empress Lysandra Voidborn's private audience chamber, not the grand throne room, but her personal working space for sensitive matters requiring discretion. Ethan entered expecting formal reprimand at minimum, possibly career-ending charges. What he got was Empress Lysandra standing with rigid posture, suggesting barely controlled anger. "Captain Drake," Lysandra began with ice-cold precision, "has anyone explained to you the concept of operational authorization, of chain of command, of the perhaps slight difference between taking initiative within your authority and completely rewriting security protocols for an imperial facility without consultation?" Ethan stood at attention, taking what he deserved, but then something shifted in her delivery. The anger remained, but underneath it emerged concern that seemed disproportionate to professional frustration. "You put yourself at significant personal risk with those overrides. If the breach had been hostile, your actions would have made you the primary target. You could have been killed, and for what? To save people who could have been rescued through proper channels, given another 20 minutes. Ethan, knowing he was already in trouble, responded with honesty. "Your Majesty, people would have died in 20 minutes. I had the capability to prevent that immediately. Yes, I exceeded my authority, but I'd make the same choice again because the alternative was letting people die while I waited for permission." The response clearly frustrated Lysandra even more, but now the frustration carried different weight. "That is exactly the problem, Captain Drake. You have this infuriating tendency to do the right thing in ways that are completely inappropriate. You save lives while disregarding every protocol. You make decisions that should require consultation, as though you alone can determine the correct course." She was pacing now, indicating genuine emotional agitation. "And you're standing there looking appropriately contrite while clearly not regretting your actions at all, which makes punishing you feel absurd when the outcome was objectively successful." And she stopped mid-sentence, visibly trying to regain composure. When she continued, the words came out before she could stop them. "If you weren't already taken, I would seriously consider trying to court you myself, because this combination of competence and complete disregard for appropriate boundaries is either the most aggravating or most attractive thing I have encountered in decades." The silence that followed was absolute. Lysandra, who just accidentally confessed interest while scolding him, looked equally shocked by her own words. She recovered first. "Forget I said that, entirely. That was inappropriate and will not be referenced again. The point is that your actions, while successful, created—" She stopped again. "You're not taken, are you? That was an assumption. I apologize if I presumed." Ethan processing whiplash from expected reprimand to accidental royal confession. Managed. No, Your Majesty, I'm not in any relationship. But I'm fairly certain you just accidentally said something you didn't mean to say while frustrated. And we should probably both pretend that didn't happen so you can appropriately reprimand me. Lysandra's laugh was unexpected and genuine. Captain Drake, I have ruled an empire for 300 years. I am capable of controlling what I say even when frustrated. If I spoke those words, I meant them, though I certainly didn't intend to speak them quite so bluntly during a disciplinary meeting. She sat, gesturing for him to do the same, a break from formal protocols. My frustration with you is genuine. You did exceed authority, you did create complications. But my frustration is also rooted in the fact that you were correct. Your actions saved lives that proper procedures would have cost. And watching you make that choice revealed something about your character that I find compelling in ways that are deeply inconvenient. Ethan processed carefully. Are you informing me that you're interested in me personally while also explaining why that interest is inappropriate? Because that seems complicated. Lysandra's smile acknowledged the absurdity. That is precisely what I am saying. Your infuriating competence has attracted my attention in ways I didn't anticipate. I cannot in good conscience punish you for actions that saved lives. And I am suggesting that perhaps we might find ways to interact that are less fraught with protocol violations and accidental confessions. What followed over subsequent months was careful, complicated, occasionally awkward development of something between empress and officer that defied easy categorization. They established informal meetings, tactical discussions extending beyond professional necessity, shared meals in her private quarters, conversations where she could be Lysandra with someone who'd already seen her lose composure. Ethan learned that the imperial authority Lysandra projected constantly was exhausting to maintain, that she'd spent 3 centuries being seen as position rather than person, and that his tendency to treat her with respect but not excessive deference was refreshing. Lysandra discovered that Ethan's infuriating tendency to do the right thing in inappropriate ways was rooted in genuine conviction, and that his presence provided honest partnership she hadn't experienced in longer than she cared to admit. The relationship created predictable complications. Ethan's colleagues were impressed and concerned. Etherian officials expressed varying degrees of outrage about propriety, and both had to navigate practical challenges of age gap and species differences. But they also discovered genuine compatibility built on mutual respect, shared values about protecting people over preserving protocols, and understanding that develops when 2 people are brave enough to be honest even when inconvenient. Standing together in Lysandra's private gardens, she referenced the moment that started everything. When I scolded you while accidentally confessing I wanted to court you, I was mortified by my lack of control. I have spent 3 centuries maintaining perfect imperial composure, and you made me lose it completely. Now I understand that moment differently. It was my heart recognizing something my mind wasn't ready to acknowledge. That perfect composure is lonely, and sometimes the most important thing is finding someone who makes you forget to maintain it. Ethan's response carried warmth. You said if I weren't taken past tense, like you assumed I already belonged to someone. Now I am taken, but not in the way